Today I'd like to talk to you about chassis. Chassis is a very popular item today. A lot of shops are working on chassis today. And what I've done is I've got a couple samples here to show you some specifics about how we go about looking at chassis and adding it to the Beck Arnley product line. Chassis is actually one category for Beck Arnley, 101. Everything is all in 101 series. That's the category for chassis. We don't separate out all the specifics and all the little different subcategories of chassis. So it's a very, very in-depth product line with a lot of part numbers. We have over 2,800 part numbers in that line, and it's growing, and we're continuing to grow that line. For years, it used to be that ball joints was all you needed for a repair on a control arm. Well, today, what we're finding is that the technicians don't want to waste the time and energy to replace a ball joint when they can replace a control arm. It's a lot quicker, easier repair. On top of that, they get the new bushings as well as any other hardware or attaching arms that are necessary to make the job complete and to do it right. So the other thing too that we've done is we put it into a plastic bag, and we've done this because there could be hardware in here or a carter pin, whatever is necessary for the installation, so we want to make sure they don't lose any of that. We also found that with control arms, because of the multitude of different configurations, weights, shapes, sizes, the bag makes it more sensible when it comes to shelf space. So we think about the WD, the jobbers, the warehouses, the stores, and how it's going to be stocked there. And for space utilization, we decided to go with a bag. Just made it a little bit easier. It's a very heavy, thick mill bag, so we feel good and comfortable about the fact of how it's going to be housed. And we'll also go ahead and put a protector on top of the ball joint to protect the rubber components, because we know it's a bag, things do happen, but with this protection device we can go ahead and make sure that we can keep the integrity of the ball joint intact. This happens to be an aluminum piece. It's a little bit lighter and easier to handle, but we also have ones that are not this way. We've got ones that are very, very heavy. We also have some, though, that we've seen where there is no ball joint. This ball joint's a separate item. And I can tell you, like on a Corolla, it's a separate item. And 9 times out of 10, you're replacing the right side more than you are the left, because people hit curbs with the right side and not the left. So we recognize that, so we actually keep our inventory slanted towards that to make sure that we got the coverage for you when you need it. Now, when it comes to a ball joint and the control arm, and if the control arm does not have the ball joint with it, we sell the ball joint separately. There was a time when we thought about adding the ball joint to the control arm, but let's just say maybe the control arm bushing is the only thing that's bad, the ball joint's not. We're not going to force you to pay the extra money unless you need it, but that's the option to the purchaser, okay? But we're going to make the coverage available. The other thing too is we have to be careful, because there's a lot of competitors out there, and if not everybody is adding the ball joint to the control arm, now I'm overpriced than everybody. So there are reasons behind the things that we do. But the critical, important factor, the ball joint's available, the control arm's available. Stabilizer links are another big item in suspension. These stabilizer links usually last between 40 and 60,000 miles is what we're seeing. And so it's critical that you have all of them, the rights, the lefts, the fronts, the rears, the uppers, the lowers, wherever it might be. So also you want to make sure that you add new hardware. In this particular instance, I've got a Honda part here. We're actually sourcing it from the person who supplies, or the manufacturer who supplies Honda. I also have another label, and this was done because we took this part from that manufacturer to another company to have them add the hardware. Because typically when you buy it from the original equipment dealer, they don't come with hardware. We're going to make sure they have hardware, because that's something that we know the technicians need. These things rust. They've been under the car 3, 4, 5 years. They rust. They're difficult. You can't reuse them. Let's make it easy. Put hardware in here, like with all the suspension. Another example of a stabilizer link. This one has a hex head in it. Just so happens that original equipment came with the hex head. This is used for when we disassemble, because you need to hold on to this ball stud, because again, I talked about it a minute ago, rust. This nut is very difficult to come off if you can't hold this ball stud, stationary. So in this application, it's a hex head. There are some applications where there's a wrench flat on the bottom here, and then we'll follow that as well. But Beck Arnley program, following OE, form fit function of OE. This one came with the hex head, we'll give you the hex head, and then follow that criteria as well as the hardware. We'll add the hardware, which OE does not. We have a Volkswagen application. You'll see some shiny areas here. Well, this is where the manufacturer had to remove their name, remove any other kind of identification marks, because their contract with OES doesn't permit them to sell, but if their name is not on it, they can sell. And we're okay with that, as are a lot of companies, and also the installers know this. They see this all the time. And on the Beck Arnley program, this happens quite a bit, because again, we are looking for that manufacturer that's supplying top tier. So we actually have had some instances where some customers have called in and said, hey, you don't have this part, but your competitor does. So the first thing we do is say, who's the competitor? What's the make, model, year application? What's the location? What's the specific part that they're looking for? So I have a stabilizer link. This was a recent issue that we ran into. Well, let me first go over the tag. It's a sample parts tag. It's OEM sample parts tag. We have a library here in the home office in Smyrna, Tennessee, where we keep vendor samples, manufacturer samples, and original equipment samples. We call it the OVM file. It's really the basis for the program of everything that's in the box in Beck Arnley, because I can validate, or we can validate, every part that's in our box through this file. And I'll give you a really good example of how this application-specific sourcing works too. Application-specific sourcing being one part at a time. We don't group a lot of parts together to go source. This one item, we're out searching to see if we can get the part to put in the Beck Arnley box. That's the application-specific sourcing. This part fits in 07 to 10 8 MDX. So we get a phone call and the customer says, you know, your competitor down the street, whoever that might be, has this item and you don't. So we find out, again, the application, we find out who the competitor is, and we go buy the part. And what do you know, when I put these two together, and let me see if I can get it together where I can show you, they don't measure up at all. In fact, the angles are different, and also it's an inch and a half too short. But they're asking you, the technician, to put this on an 07 to 10 MDX. Beck Arnley's not going to do that because it doesn't match form, fit, function. Just the angle alone, how are you going to put this part where this should go? Besides that, how are you going to make up the difference in length? It won't work. That's why we don't have it. We didn't take that consolidation, okay? It just works easier that way. So we actually looked at another vendor, a competitor, and they did the exact same thing. They followed suit, and in fact, they didn't even offer any hardware. But they're going to tell you that this fits as 07 to 10 or 07 to 10 MDX, as this other company will also. But when you lay these up with each other, there's a definite difference in length. So what about Beck Arnley? Well, we have this part that our competitors have. We match identically, but we don't carry it up to 07, 08, 09, or 2010. We stop at 05. We don't go any further. That's because it doesn't fit. It's not proper. So we're not going to put it in our box. That's why we sometimes don't have a part that our competitor might. There's reasons behind it. So it was good that that customer called us, because we could tell him and actually let them know what's going on. And then also they could keep their eyes open for the competitor to make sure that they don't end up with a problem with their customer. Again, talking about application-specific sourcing, I've got a stabilizer link here for a Volkswagen. This is a special material that Volkswagen's come up with, and we find a lot of this type material on your Europeans, and actually we find it more on some Subarus now on the Asian side. Here's the tag. It's the OEM tag, so we know we got the right part. Also, we've got a couple of descriptions here. It could be the company name of the manufacturer. It could be a logo. Could be the VW part number or the Audi part number, whichever might be the case. Turn it over, even more information. All of which is important to us when it comes to sourcing, because we might know who this manufacturer is. Again, I said earlier we have over 800 suppliers, and that's growing. So we could actually call them up and say, hey, do you got part number XYZ, 000YYY? And we'll be able to then identify that. Just so happens that we were able to make that happen. So when you open up the Beck Arnley box, you're actually getting the exact part that came off that vehicle from the exact same manufacturer. The difference, the only difference is going to be if they went to the dealer to buy it, they would actually have that writing that's embedded in the mold. In our particular case, they had to scratch their name off, and that's again for protection purposes against their OES contract. So we looked at the competitor. So we have this part from Volkswagen, and our competitor is asking you to use this part. And right away I can see if you go up to a counter and you ask for this and you get this, are you really going to think that you got the right part? We're not going to do that to you. We're going to make sure. We would rather not put it in a box unless we can do this for you. Okay? So this is the importance of the detail that we go to in the application-specific sourcing program that we have. This also validates our OVM file because we can back up what's in our box by what's in that file. One more. Again, another link on an Audi and a Volkswagen. These are becoming quite popular. We were able to source it identically. What's the competitor trying to do? No different than the previous one. Let's just try to make something work. Let's just try to make the sale. It's not what we're about. This is what we're about. We'll let the competitor do what they want to do. I'm going to make sure that our department here at Product Management at Beck Arnley, we all want to run this same strategy and philosophy. It's got to match. And that's how we do it. And with that, just a quick overview on the chassis. Talks about some of the details that we do. And again, I want to let you know that we're not going to put something in our box just because it fits. It's got to fit, it has to work, it has to perform just like it was intended to do. And I hope that we've given you a little bit of confidence as we try to instill in ourselves when we do our sourcing to put the right part in the box for you.